Why are 99% of landlords selling or thinking about selling? Here are 4 reasons landlords are selling heading into 2024 in the United Kingdom, and why I clearly know 99% aren't selling, but why I think it's mad for even 1% of them to sell. Since 2012, I've been a full-time property investor and built one of the UK's largest home buying companies. And these are the 4 things I constantly hear landlords get worried about, and how if you know what you're doing, they need not be. So let's get into it. The number 1 reason is Section 24. This was introduced in April 2017, and the full effects were phased in over a few years. So the full impacts of it were actually felt in the 2020-2021 tax year. But what is it? In short, Section 24 is a change to mortgage interest relief. So prior to Section 24, you could deduct the full cost of your mortgage interest as a cost and only be taxed on the profit left over. And now you can't deduct your mortgage cost as a cost, and instead you receive a mortgage interest relief of 20%. So this actually doesn't make any difference if you're a landlord and your total income is less than £37,701, because you're paying a basic rate of tax of 20% anyway. So that 20% mortgage interest relief you get instead offsets the fact that you can't claim interest as a cost. But if you earn more than £37,701 and therefore pay 40% tax, or earn over £150,000 and you're paying 45% tax, you're only getting that 20% relief on your interest, not the 40 or 45% relief to match your higher tax band. And so that additional 20 or 25% tax comes out your income. So you can imagine for a lot of landlords, they went from making thousands in profit a month to all of a sudden making far, far less, or even making a loss and having to pay more tax than they're actually earning. So how do we get around this? Rather than have properties in your own name, where these tax rules apply, we have them in companies instead, where these tax rules don't apply. So if you're investing in property right now and you're not buying them within a company, you are shooting yourself in the foot right now. You may be wondering why the tax rules apply to you as an individual rather than to a company. Now, my opinion is the government wants to discourage property investments to be held by individuals that are difficult to track, and encourage them to be held within companies that are far, far easier to track and tax. As a company, you have to submit annual accounts and so on. The second thing upsetting landlords is the prospect of the government abolishing Section 21. So what is Section 21? It allows a landlord to evict a tenant by providing them with 2 months' notice when their fixed term contract has come to an end. Sounds pretty standard. But the key is you aren't required to provide a tenant with a reason for the eviction, which is where the phrase no fault eviction is coined from. So although this change is looking like it's going to be delayed, should you be worried about it? And how can you get around it? Firstly, I don't think professional landlords should be worried about it at all. I'm not worried about it, because although Section 21 may be abolished, Section 8 will still exist, and it's likely to be amended to strengthen it. With Section 8, after a tenant has lived in the property for 6 months, you can still evict a tenant under reasonable circumstances, like if the tenant stops paying rent, or if you want to redevelop it or sell it. You just can't use Section 8 to evict a tenant for no reason. So really, abolishing Section 21 isn't going to be much of an issue for professional landlords. It's only going to be an irritation to poorly run buy-to-let properties. The third thing that's got landlords all worried is EPCs. EPC stands for Energy Performance Certificates. You might have noticed when you buy or sell a home, you're required to have an EPC that measures the energy efficiency of your property. So a grade A is really good and means your property is really energy efficient. So you'll probably have great insulation, double glazed windows, maybe some solar panels. A grade G is really bad. So think single glazed windows, little or no insulation. Right now in the UK, your property needs to have an EPC rating of E or above to rent it out. The upcoming plan was by 2025, buy-to-let properties coming up to rent would have to have an EPC rating of C or higher, with all buy-to-let tenancies having to reach this rating by 2028. This had landlords panicking because at the moment, 71% of landlords have properties with EPC ratings under C, so D and under. However, no need to worry right now, as the government has now scrapped that upcoming change. However, that is for now. In my view, it is inevitable. This will happen at some point in the future. And if you're an experienced landlord, you'll know that you need to set aside a portion of your profits for the cyclical need to update your properties. A kitchen, a bathroom, carpets are not going to last forever. So in the same way you need to be setting aside rent for maintenance for those sorts of updates that you might do every 5 to 10 years, you also need to set aside money to upgrade the energy efficiencies of your buy-to-let properties so that when the legislation does come in, you're not stressed. I personally set aside 10 to 15% of property profit every single month into a maintenance fund, so I'm never caught out. And finally, number 4, interest rates. Unless you've been living under a rock, you would have noticed rates skyrocket to now 5.25% from the lows of 0.1%. This isn't just a stress on landlords, but a stress on everyone that borrows money. From your own mortgage to credit cards, car finance, personal loans, the list goes on. For the landlord, this seems like a complete disaster. All of a sudden, your monthly payments are going up and up and up, and the rent you're charging has stayed the same. If you're in that exact situation as a landlord, you have fallen into a trap that is easier than you think to get out of. The solution? Increase your rents. If your mortgage has gone up £200, increase your rent by £200. I know tenants watching this won't like me saying that, but that is why rents have been increasing at the highest rates in a decade. The experienced property investor understands it isn't them that's paying for the mortgage or the upkeep of the property, it is the tenant renting it. See you in the next video.